toilets. EcoVia is into disinfectant liquids and coatings which you can put on the toilet as well as wash basin and any part of the toilet. So the amount of water required to clean and the amount of cleaning required per day is reduced. We have Munnarivan that's into sensor technology for diagnostics of diseases both in the toilet as well as the sewer lines for community spread. Int Classic into adjustable toilets. We have 4 others which are in the process of onboarding: electrocoagulation and oxidation STP, aerobic and anaerobic treatment in one unit itself with smaller volumes, robotic cleaning for manhole and sewer lines, as well as toilet in situ with an optimized flush. Some of our medtech incubators, and we have other incubators through IPTIF, which is IIT Palakkad's Technology Innovation iHub Foundation, which is one of the 23 hubs all over India for cyber physical systems. They are focused on intelligent collaborative systems in the safety and energy domain. We have Great Eagles, which is into drone for safety in the construction industry. Prakshepan was our open pitch, and we have identified 2 which we are in the process of onboarding into agri-tech and plastic for reduction in pollution due to plastics. Some of our photographs of our incubation spaces, our wet labs, and so coming to Global Sanitation Center of Excellence, we have our collaborators, HDFC Parivartan and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which are our funding partners. International Association for Plumbing and Mechanical Officials, IAPMO, and Toilet Board Coalition, which are our knowledge partners. ERM Scientific is an industry partner, and we have other industries, government agencies, NGOs, and to collaborate. So our focus is technology optimization, real-life testing, adherence to standards, which is not there in the industry today, and developing the business model so that these startups are successful through the line, and of course skill and livelihood change for the sanitation workers. We have 4 pillars. First pillar is to funnel all the ideas into the second pillar, which is the incubator. We are focusing in the incubator right from customer discovery, value proposition to starting the testing life cycle, as well as enabling the incubators to discover what's the reality on the ground. Third pillar is for scale manufacturing deployment showcase so that they can exhibit their products. Fourth pillar is skill development, final scaling, and investments to go to the next level. So some of our collaborators, NGOs like Keystone Foundation, S3IDF, DICCI, and government and other bodies. So we're trying to remove manual scavenging. It's supposed to be banned, but we still have people who are going down the sewer lines. We want health for the sanitation workforce. PPEs exist, but are one size fit all and not too convenient in the Indian humid environment. Resource recovery, a lot of nitrogen and phosphates are going down the drain, urea as well. So can we recover these? And water, another key source. Can we create circular economy through fertilizer generation? And degradation of the environment, both flora and fauna, and skilled manpower as well as cost saving. MedTech, we have West Pharmaceuticals as one of our collaborators, and we are still early stages, only 3 incubators on board, but we do have collaborations with medical hospitals as well as medical institutions to help support the ecosystem. Some of our partners and our family of IIT as well as people with roots in Palakkad, Coimbatore region to support us. Now coming to, this is our training along with IIPMO and IIT Palakkad's Continuing Education Center. We are certifying. We've started the first batch, plumbing apprentice coursing. They finished the I wouldn't say theory. They finished the practical and theory because it's 80% practical. Now they've gone to the industry for internships, and they should be full-fledged certified plumbers in 3 weeks. That was part of the training. I will skip this. Those are the realities on the ground. This is the reality on the ground. Either toilets exist, don't exist, functional, not functional. There are treatment plants. There are reinvent technology by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We're also going to be part of that to indigenize it and make it suitable for Indian environment. So here the entire treatment takes place behind the toilet itself under the flush tank, and water is recycled. The fecal matter is actually created, turned into fertilizer, ready for use. Coming to our grand challenge, a little perspective. So our collaborators, as always, we have, this is the timeline. It's been part of your email, so I'm not going through it. Themes, we have a whole lot of problem statements listed down for you to help trigger the ideas. And we had 20th January, we had an online event with Principal Scientific Advisor's Office, Dr. Mohanty as the chief guest. And then we had this event at Coimbatore with a whole lot of panel speakers, right from NGOs to IAP, Indian Plumbing Association personnel as well. So we're trying to collaborate with a diverse range of people to bring various perspectives into the field. This was our second online event, 11th February. Today is our second physical event, and over to you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the introduction. Now, let me take the pleasure of introducing Professor Ramesh Venkateshwaran, Chairman, Board of Governors, IIT Palakkad, our chief guest and keynote speaker. Professor Ramesh Venkateshwaran, Chairman, Board of Governors, IIT Palakkad, is a management professional and educator. He is a mechanical engineer from IIT Bombay and a postgraduate in management from IIM Bangalore, and is an adjunct faculty in marketing area at IIM Bangalore and IIM Udaipur. His areas of interest include product strategy, customer experience management, and strategic selling. He was the recipient of the Distinguished Alumni Award of IIM Bangalore in 2009. He also was the gold medalist of the batch of 1980 at IIM Bangalore. Ramesh Venkateshwaran is also closely involved with various socially relevant issues and projects. He is a founder member, chairman, and volunteer at Vishwas, a not-for-profit counseling organization in Bengaluru that offers free and confidential counseling services for the people in emotional stress since 1991. Now, I would like to invite you, sir, to the podium. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And on behalf of IIT Palakkad, it's a pleasure to welcome all of you to this day's event organized by TechIn. I think it's a subject, as all of you will know, that any amount of work you do in this is not enough. And I don't know when we will ever say that we are comfortable in this. So it's obviously a very, very important topic for not just our generation, but for all the generations to come. So it's very appropriate that we are talking about a topic that needs so much attention. For me personally, as the member of the Board of Governors of IIT Palakkad, it's even more satisfying and exciting that a young third generation institute like IIT Palakkad is actively involved in subjects of national importance and societal relevance. So that's the good thing, because as you said, I'm a management person, and we are always fighting the resources and the capabilities and the experience of legacy institutes, the large institutes who have so much more experience, expertise, and so on. And therefore, when we have to work with this, we have to vie with a lot of other people who have better options. A little bit about Palakkad. Anuradha has told you, but basically IIT Palakkad is a third generation IIT, and we have state-of-art laboratory facilities, infrastructure, but most importantly, I think, is we have an absolutely fascinating group of young faculty. We have a group of, and for a nascent institute of just 7 years, we have over 1,300, 1,400 students and over 100 plus faculties, and growing each year. The young people, and that's the important thing I think that makes IIT Palakkad different from many of the legacy institutes, is that there is the energy levels, the exposures that these young people have internationally and nationally is huge. Tech-In, Anuradha has told you about, and we are hoping that Tech-In will be a good platform for dealing with matters of relevance, one of course in the state of Kerala, and as we move into a larger context. I don't know how many of you have visited our campus, but we have a beautiful campus in God's own country, Kerala. And our new campus hopefully will be ready by the end of this year. It's a 500-acre campus, which is very, very well located, very close to Coimbatore, and it's in the process of coming up. One of the important things about Tech-In is that thanks to the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India and various other partners, we are actively involved in matters like sustainable wastewater management, sanitation, hygiene, and so on and so forth. And we are expecting to receive a funding of over $5 million in the course of the next 5 years to keep us going on this. You do know that, again, Anuradha has shown you the kind of people who are involved in this, and I know for certainty we have people in the audience who have been actively involved with supporting us, working with us. And I think one of the good things about IIT Palakkad and Tech-In is the goodwill we have of experts in the field who come with a lot of experience and who are willing to give time to mentor, to support, to handhold, to guide a whole lot of startup people over there. Today's event is especially important when we look at some basic data in the area of sanitation, not just in the world in general and in India in particular. While we know that water and sanitation is a basic need, I'm sure many of you know this number, but every time I think we need to remind ourselves that as of 2020, as per UNICEF, only 54% of the world population had access to safely managed sanitation. The open toilets, open defecation, and the kind of water that we all deal with, we all know about it. And therefore, I think this is a very, very urgent, crying need for the country in particular. So any amount of work that goes in here is good. I don't even need to tell you about the effects of poor water, the kind of diseases that we cause, but if you look at some numbers, that over 1.7 billion cases of diarrhea in children below the age of 5, over 3 million cases of cholera, 11 million cases of typhoid, and this leads to a whole lot of other complications, cost of healthcare, cost of infant mortality, and so on and so forth. So while the government of India is doing a lot to try and move this, and I think it's up to people like us to tap and harness the potential available. And when you see young people sitting over here, I know the kind of vision and the kind of excitement there is when you deal with young startups. So I hope Tech-In will be one of the organizations, institutions that will be a platform for doing something to help answer these urgent problems that we are facing. As I said, one of the challenges and one of the opportunities that somebody like Tekin has and IIT Palghat has is there are obviously a huge number of legacy institutions in India. We have from IISc, the IITs, the NITs and so on, and the private institutions today. But I think what Palghat has to offer, and institutions like Palakkad and Tekin, is the fact that today 80% of our faculty are probably less than 35 years old. They come with completely fresh ideas. They are not products of the past, but they're actually platforms for the future. So we have the benefit of having a group of people in the 30s who have benefited from excellent education, not just in India, but internationally, but who are current generation. They are all the generation of Twitter, they are the generation of Instagrams, they are the generation of social media, and therefore technology is something they were born with. They didn't have to adapt to technology. And to that extent, I think we have an excellent opportunity that we have a clean slate to work on. We do not have to fix a painting or draw anything that was already there and write on top of it. So I think one of the greatest advantages that we have is our young age and compactness allows us to be agile, allows us to be nimble, allows us to move along with times. We are not the Titanic, we are like a speedboat. And therefore we not only have speed, we also have agility. And that's where I believe that we will be able to offer value to startups, to incubatees, to people who want to come with ideas. And I hope we will not disappoint all the people who have ideas and come. So with the young faculty and so on and so forth. Thoughts basically as my 45 to 50 years experience, especially in the management field. One of the things I find is there is absolutely no dearth of young talent in this country. And we know this because they're all doing it for other countries. It's not that we don't have them. I am a great believer in Indian education. I have studied only in Indian education. I've studied only in the governmental system, and IIT and IIM are all Indian government educational system. So I am not a great fan of Western education, except that I suppose I used to think at the postgraduate level maybe the West was a good place. You must be there, because I think the West offered a lot more than what India could offer. But today when I interact with the faculty at IIT Palghat, which I have not been doing much, but today I've had an opportunity to deal with people here, I can say that we are no worse off from anyone else. I think we are as good off, or if not better than anyone else. It's just that our mindset is a little different from the West. Our risk-taking ability, our ability to break hierarchical systems needs to be done. The West is less hierarchy-driven. The West is more questioning. The West allows debate, discussion far more than us. And I think if we can inculcate some of these qualities, which has taken the Western world to where they are. And yet, while we may say the Western world, the Japanese culture is as traditional as the Indian culture. They're very hierarchy driven, they're very culture, they're very traditional, they're very, all of that we have in Southeast Asia or East. Yet they have been able to break. And I think these are the models we need to look at. I don't know whether we need to ape the Western model. We need to look at the Eastern model and see how is it with culture they were able to do all of this. It was not through immigrants, it was not through a melting pot of all of this, but through their own talent, through their own thing, they cashed in on their strength. So I personally believe that we need to cash in on this rather than trying to copy somebody else. Do something that is relevant to you. So the point I'm trying to make is that the two things. One is you have a huge pool of talented, energetic young people, and you have a huge market which needs, anything that goes into this market is like a sponge which will get absorbed. There is no shortage. We are not at a stagnation point. Countries are talking about 0.5%, 1% growth on a 5 million, 10 million population. We are talking about a 6% growth on a population of 1.5 billion. I mean, the numbers are just different. I don't even know why people compare India to the rest of the world. We are not even in the league. We are in a completely different league. We are in a completely different league. And therefore, I think the challenge for the younger generation, for the startups, for the older people who have gone into this is how do we tap in on this and how do we cash in on these whole things? So there are numerous options, and this is something we can talk till the cows come home, but I'm not going to do that. There are numerous options, there are many options, possibilities to come up with new products and solutions. The problems are staring us in the face. Every day you look at it, from potholes to water to sanitation to we know the problems. It's not some rocket science that we're talking about. The point, I think, is how do we narrow it down to say, I want to find a solution which is workable, which is marketable, which is economical and commercially viable. It's got to be everything. It's not got to be on subsidies. I think we need to, and these are the areas we need to work on. How do I create? Solutions will be found, but then it has to meet some conditions. It has to meet all these conditions. It must be scalable, it must be producible, it must be executable, it must be acceptable, and it must be viable. If you don't have that, we don't. So the point I want to make is success in innovation, and unfortunately, again, I'm talking to the younger people who are in the startup world, everybody wants to be a unicorn. And the unfortunate reality is we all look at success of a person today, and when they are a multi-billion-dollar company. Nobody wants to go back and realize that for 20 years they did not know where the next meal was going to come from. You can take a Bill Gates, you can take a Steve Jobs, you can take an Elon Musk, you can take just about anybody. Jeff Bezos, you can look at anybody. Or you can take a Nike's, Phil Knight, it doesn't matter. The point is today they're successful, but you read their biographies, you read their life history, and you will see for the first 15 years, they were close to bankruptcy, they had to sell their stuff, they were living on God knows what. And that's what, as somebody said very nicely, and I'm sure you know it, I was talking to the inventor of the iPod, and we were talking about this. And the reality is, as they say, it takes 20 years to become an overnight success. And that is the reality. So the point I want to make is, today's success in the world is not about ideas. I don't believe so. I think everybody's smart enough to find ideas. There is enough technology that I've sat in on enough presentations on incubators. Excellent people, excellent ideas, a lot of fire in the belly. The point is two things. One is you not only, and that all of that is their passion, commitment, but what you need is stamina. You need stamina. This is not a 100 meters race. This is an endless race. And only after 10 years can you really say, give the story of your success. You have no idea what's going to happen day after tomorrow. But you know that I'm going in this direction. So it's about stamina. The second area, one of my areas is on product strategy and product development. At the end of the day, it's not enough to have a great product. What you need is a market that needs your great product. It has to start in the marketplace. Business starts and ends in the marketplace. Unfortunately, today with technology, the focus is on technology, engineering, and a whole lot, which is important. I'm not saying it's not. Of course it is important. But the point is, the greatest product is useless if nobody wants your product. So when you look at a lot of startup presentations, when you look at it, they're all very comfortable on technology. They're very comfortable. We know exactly what you want to do. So very often I ask only one question to the people who make a presentation: why should somebody buy your product? Because the minute you talk about why should somebody buy your product, you're talking about competition, you're talking about culture, you're talking about viability, you're talking about affordability. The whole business model comes into place. And for me, that's the only question a startup needs to ask, or any business needs to ask, is why would somebody buy my product as it is? And that leads you to hundreds of questions which you need to sort out as you move on. And that is why I think companies like organizations like TechIn are available, because everybody will give you a suggestion or give you a perspective on different elements to make the full elephant. It's like a jigsaw puzzle we have to do. So the process of product development, and you can read the biographies of any of the great guys who have started, you will see that their focus is not here, their focus is outside. It's actually the consumer. Who is going to use my service or product? Let me think from his or her point of view. And from every little thing. So the point I'm trying to make is evaluate the market, customer discovery, find the product solution fit, all of that is there. But at the end of the day, what I have found is, in a very simple one-sentence manner, map a the consumer's journey, map the journey. What all are they doing? How all are they going to be interacting with your product? And what can I do to improve that? There are so many products, as Anuradha was saying, there are so many areas. You have lots of toilets, but how many people are using those toilets? So it's all nice as statistics to say we invested so much in mobile toilets, we did so much, we did this, we did that. Every time I pass through one of the public toilets, I really wonder, and I ask how many people are using this. How many people have got the toilet there and urinating right outside it? I mean, these are the questions we should ask. Why are they doing it? If it was good, I say that let's take a simple example. I mean, people from the West come and criticize us and say this is such a terrible thing. My answer is, can you imagine how shameful it is and what the man and woman must be going through to have to do that? Nobody enjoys it. Nobody likes it. If I do it, that means I'm forced to do it. And I think these are the problems we need to put while designing our products. How do we make it respectful, easy? The person must want to use it, my products. And that is the challenge. So it's not enough to say I delivered the product. Your test lies in, is the consumer using your product and wants more of your product? So this is really my experience and learning on why product. And today we know, with all the technology, with all the brains, with all the fabulous people, with all the investments, with all the venture capitalists, new product success rate is still 4 to 5%. It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed in 40 years. 90 out of 100, 95 out of 100 ideas will still fail. It's not because of want of money, it's not because of want of idea, it's because at the end of the day it has to work together. So I think TechIn is an institution like many other incubators and cells which will open. So as I would like to reinforce that it's not enough to be passionate, it's got to be also sensible. We need to work, and stamina. That's it. Am I in it for the long haul? And I think we have a great pool of young people who have all of this. It's just about channelizing it, and that's where all the senior people who are here for the panel discussion, the mentors, they're all giving their time for doing all of this. They've all got into businesses like this after being successful in the corporate world. So obviously the people who are going to guide, who are going to mentor, who are going to support are people who've been in the other world and who are now committing themselves to this world. So I would think that that this is where we really need to look at. I would like to thank all the people who have been a part of TechIn in their support system. I know how much time and energy they all spend. And for those who are making pitches, those who are want to be there, one is, of course, make the pitch, but more important, if and when you're all if you do get part of the TechIn initiative, do not miss the opportunity to cash in on the kind of expertise, experience, and wisdom that the mentors, the guides, all of them bring, because it's not easy to get all of them together. They're available, and many times we don't use them effectively enough. So once again, Anuradha, thank you for inviting me. Thank you all for being here, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for the informative talk and words of encouragement for our startups and young entrepreneurs. I now call upon Mr. Sridharan Muralidharan to hand over the memento to Professor Ramesh Venkateshwar.
I'm part of the host. You shouldn't be giving me a memento.
Yes, out of respect.
Thank you again, sir. Uh, we would like to commence the first panel discussion for the day, for which the topic is General and Physical Treatment Systems. The panelists for Dr. Veena Srinivasan, Director, Center for Social and Environmental Innovation, ETRI. Mr. Sridharan Muralidharan, Chairman, Mobility Aftermarket. Dr. Sanjeev Sambandhan, Associate Professor, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Dr. Veena Srinivasan is presently Director of Center for Social and Environmental Innovation at the Ashoka Trust for Research in Ecology and Environment, Bangalore. Prior to joining ETRI, she worked for several years on energy and water issues in India, California, and globally. Dr. Veena has a PhD from Stanford University's EMET Interdisciplinary Program in Environment and Resources, and a Master's in Energy and Environmental Studies from Boston University, and a BTech from Indian Institute of Technology, Mumbai. Dr. Veena is a specialist in water resources, social and environmental innovation, socio-hydrology, water policy, development, and water sustainability. Since she is not here, I extend my warm welcome to her. Moving on, Mr. Sridharan Muralidharan is presently Chairman of Mobility Aftermarket. He is Ericksonian Certified Leadership Coach and is deeply involved in coaching, mentoring, and consulting industries, small businesses, MSMEs, and startups. He has several years of global leadership experience and has a deep knowledge of the distribution and marketing of engineering products. During his career, he has worked with different MNCs like Manhummel, Bosch India, Frost & Sullivan, Lucas India, etc. in various leadership roles. Welcome, sir. Dr. Sanjeev Sambandhan is presently an Associate Professor at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He obtained his BTech in Electrical Engineering from IIT Kharagpur and PhD in Electrical and Computer Engineering from University of Waterloo, Canada. Before joining IISc, Dr. Sanjeev worked with Electronic Materials and Device Lab, Xerox, Palo Alto Research Center, California, USA. He is an innovative academician and also the founder and director of OpenWater.in, a clean water startup. His research interests are in various aspects of semiconductor physics and flexible electronics. The moderator for this panel is Dr. Vivek Chaturvedi, Assistant Professor, IIT Palakkad. Dr. Vivek Chaturvedi is Assistant Professor at Department of Computer Science and Engineering, IIT Palakkad. He completed BE Electronics and Communication Engineering from Rajiv Gandhi Technical University, Bhopal, and has a post-graduation from USA. He also has a doctorate in electrical engineering from Florida International University. Welcome, sir. I hereby request the panelists as well as the moderator to come up onto the dais.
It's working. Hi, good morning, everyone. Am I audible? Okay, great. Yeah, so good morning, everyone. I welcome you all for the first panel discussion of today. And the topic of the panel discussion today is general and physical treatment systems. We all know the sewage generated at household or at community level has to undergo treatment before we send it for disposal or in some cases for reuse. Now these treatment that we talk about can be through natural systems, on-site system at household level, centralized and decentralized treatment plant units. Now the thing is, most of the advantage of these systems are basically taken by the urban communities. Rural is still much behind taking advantage of such treatment plants. If we look into the data which the Central Pollution Control Board or CPCB tells, it suggests that every day we have around 72,000 million liter of seepage which is generated. And out of which the STP capacity or the sewage treatment plant capacity that we have is just around 20K. So what it essentially means is the remaining 52K is just left untreated. And if you can clearly understand, that's a big problem and a huge challenge to tackle, because it not just affects the environment, it affects the health, it affects everything around us, right? So, and clearly in the recent decades, we have seen that a lot of technological development has been done in this area. Like for example, reuse of sewage water or extracting nutrients or minerals from the sludge. But again, we still have to dig deeper and see what are the other benefits that we can reap out of it. So the main discussion that we are going to do today is around the treatment systems. We want to understand from our experts that, okay, what are the upcoming technological solutions that are around us? What are the major challenges in terms of the community engagement to understand these challenges? And also, if somebody really wants to solve this problem, how can they really do it? Like as a startup or as a an inventor, what they can do actually to solve this problem. So with this, probably the motion for the panel discussion is set. So I would now like to request our distinguished panel members to please say their opening remarks. Maybe. Yeah. Okay, sure. So probably, yeah.
It's on?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay, good. Prabhaav. The word has more than one meaning. The simple meaning is effect. The effect of this entire topic of sanitation, treatment on society, be it rural, urban, small, big, large income groups, is evident. The other meaning of Prabhaav is impact. The impact solution can be best provided by startups, because by nature they're disruptive, they're fresh thinking, and therefore more prone to think out of the box. Sitting in Bangalore, where AI possibly means not Air India, despite its 100 billion order, AI probably means artificial intelligence, and chatting is not having a talk with the coffee, but leading to ChatGPT. The aspect of the treatment systems which is possibly missing and have the most prabhav is technology. We have an attitude which says that if it is sanitation, treatment system, it is bad, smelly, therefore no technology. It's actually the reverse. The ability to incorporate the latest technology is what will cause a circular economy, whereby a waste gets treated, becomes relevant, sustainable environment. To do this, an incubation center like TechIn is of high relevance too, because they are the people who can constitute and fill up the dots. How to do it? I think with more questions and answers, we'll find out the answers during the course of this entire next 1 hour. Now over to the next speaker.
Yeah, thank you and good morning to all of you. So I sort of agree with Mr. Sridharan. If you were to take a piece of paper and list out, let's say the top, the highest priority needs for humankind, okay, or for the planet, right on top would be water, food, and health, okay, in any order. And if you look at the past decades and you look at the amount of innovation that has gone into these three sectors as opposed to everything else, you'll find that these three sectors haven't moved too much, let's say in the past 3 decades, as opposed to, let's say, microelectronics or software. And the reason is largely because maybe it has had there has been a negative vibe around this, which is, I won't say negative vibe, but it's somehow been considered, or it's been taken for granted, let me put it that way. It's been taken for granted as problems that are intended to be solved by the government. And the government here is a black box where the common man does not interact with the solution providers. So that mindset needs to change, and that can change only through every individual taking responsibility and giving these 3 primary priorities high importance. If you just think about the case of, let us say, a cell phone and the mobile network, every individual decides for himself which phone they would like to buy and which service they would like to use. They have a lot of freedom there. But look at the water coming out of your tap. How much control do you have on that? And the water that is being sent out. You have no control on something that is extremely important to you, whereas you have, have a lot of say in many other things, right? So I'm very happy that in the past 5 years or so, we have seen many startups that have come up which are addressing these 3 high priority tasks with a lot of interest and enthusiasm. So that's what I have to say. I'll pass it on to the next speaker.
Sure. So, welcome, Dr. Veena. So, we were just having, the opening remarks for this session. As you know, the topic is about the treatment systems. So, maybe if you have some views on that, it would be great to hear you.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to apologize. It's just one of those things. Very, very sorry. Firstly, pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. I know that one of the questions you wanted us to talk about was really how we can influence the discourse around treatment systems and what some of the issues that currently face. And I'll speak specifically to Bangalore because this is where my team has been working. Just for context, Center for Social and Environmental Innovation is an autonomous center at A3 in Bangalore. And we've been working on the issue of decentralized wastewater treatment systems in Bangalore. Now, for those of you who are not from Bangalore, it would be interesting to know that Bangalore has a very different way of approaching the entire wastewater problem, which is that it has a decentralized wastewater law, which is one of the first in the country. It's a pioneer in basically promoting this idea that every apartment complex, which is 20 units or more, has to have a decentralized wastewater treatment plant. And now, a few cities like San Francisco have kind of adopted a very similar approach as moving away from this idea of centralized wastewater treatment to decentralized. Now, whether it's good or bad is a separate topic for discussion, but it is where we are. So I'm not getting into that debate of, should we have gone down this path? But we are on this path. And now the question is what early results are showing when we've done a couple of analysis, both with my team as well as some prior, a few years ago with some interns, to understand how these decentralized wastewater treatment plants work. And I would say broadly the research shows that there is an issue because we are really talking about something which was designed for centralized capacity with very, very specialized individuals working in a large STP. And now we've kind of completely disrupted that system, and we are expecting that thousands of apartment complexes and RWAs, which were not set up to be wastewater engineers, are suddenly having to take this entire thing over. So obviously, and not surprisingly, we are seeing all kinds of issues with non-compliance, a lot of checking the box where people are kind of building the plant, but either they don't know or they deliberately under design. Both types of issues. They don't have plant engineers. RWAs get into massive fights because they're not able to manage it. And so our work has been really in 3 or 4 areas. One is the basic research to try and understand, what is it that's working or not working with this current system, and can it be a truly disruptive one, or do we have to really go back to where we are? The second is to understand some of the pain points and incentives that a lot of these decentralized plants work, and how can we kind of innovate around that. So a lot of the work we are doing is to build the innovation ecosystem around the decentralized wastewater treatment system in Bangalore, to see if we can bring apartments together with the pollution control board, as well as, and to create sort of wastewater markets and realign incentives. So broadly, I would say that our work has been in this area of both research to understand the current state and innovation to see whether we can alter it by building a new ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's rightly said, like all three of you have mentioned the challenges which are there when we talk about these treatment systems, as well as Mr. Muralidharan mentioned about one of the best way to deal with is through startups, right? So I have this one question to Professor Sanjeev, and this is like, even for the startups, when they want to think about ideas to solve this problem, they really need to understand what is the state of the art. So if you could please throw some light on how effective can these chemical and biological systems be there for the treatment plants?
Left to itself, I mean, mankind has been there for so many years. So if you generate wastewater left to itself, nature will do a pretty good job at recovering that water. But having said that, natural systems or microbial systems, so as to say, need their time. There's a certain time constant for treatment. So if you look at conventional wastewater treatment technologies, I would ballpark them into 2 slots. One is the traditional microbial systems that you see in STPs. And the second is maybe you sort of enhance the treatment by adding some chemicals. So as I mentioned, a microbial system will do a good job if under certain conditions, in the sense that you need to have a constant flow rate of water. If there is a huge overload or underload, it will not survive. The water should not have anything that kills the microbes. For example, if it is an industrial wastewater where the pH is off the charts, or there are chemicals in there which will not allow microbes to survive. Or for example, even in a domestic wastewater kind of system, if you have extreme weather conditions, wherein, let's say, you're in a very high altitude place. Now, all of these things disrupt microbial treatment. So these are the drawbacks. But otherwise, it is nature's way of doing things. And given enough time, it would work well. Now, when it comes to chemical treatment technologies, the big question is, what do you do with the stuff that comes out after the treatment technology? A chemical treatment process is extremely specific, I would say. It addresses certain challenges, but the questions become, what chemicals are you using, and what is the overhead to create those chemicals? There is going to be an engine or an industry that is creating those chemicals. What is the outcome of that? So when you look at it in a holistic point of view, if you talk about a sustainable world, then this entire budget, does it work out to be a positive or a negative? So these are the 2 points that I would raise. So there is a lot of room for innovation.
Sure. Thank you. So now when we talk of startups, Mr. Muralidharan, I have this question for you. Even if I have an idea, where should I really go to get some funding? I hope not Shark Tank, right? So from what we see with government initiative, other areas, what do you think could be the main areas or avenues for funding companies in this treatment system domain?
I'm of the opinion that funding is the least of the problems. What is the issue is a business model, which I hope I get a chance to elaborate later. Funding is there based on the stage of development you're in. If you're just at the product development stage, proof of concept stage, you have organizations like Startup India, you have IITs, here in this case TechN, will be more than willing to fund. You move from proof of concept to some kind of a minimum value product, early stage. Then you have angel investors. My good friend PKG is sitting in the audience. He runs the Malabar Angel Network. And there are in Bangalore, you have the Bangalore Angel Network, you have the Chennai Angel Network. You go everywhere, you have angels everywhere. I don't know what to do with them. You have a Chhattisgarh Angel Network. So at that stage, you have the angel networks. You go one step more, from the angels, you have high net income who may be sitting in Germany today, but those Indians have a lot of loyalty towards such projects in India. And I've said Germany because I've lived there. Of course, you have it in US, you have it in Middle East, you have it all over the place. You have the HNIs. You move on, and if you cross these three levels, you'll come to a stage when the VC thinks, my goodness, they've stayed for so long, there must be some money in it. So the smaller venture capitalists start pumping you money. And there are lists of them. There are lists of them, including Infosys Foundation, the works. I don't want to mention all of them. In fact, one of them is a speaker who will be coming in the afternoon. And she does about 2 crores of business for any such thing, and her boss is a classmate of mine. So there's no shortage. And then you move on, you come to the Ps, the private equity guys. So to answer your question, based on the stage of development of the product and market, you have various categories of investors. And if you noticed, I deliberately and consciously did not mention CSR funds. Because I am a believer that if you have a product which somebody buys, it could be an idli or a rava idli, the guy will buy. So why should I look for a CSR fund and all these pro bono things? Get a product, have a business plan, go through various stages. Money is not a problem.
Thank you. So, Dr. Veena, clearly, I mean, there can be technical solution, there can be, advancement in science which can tell how to do a good treatment, but community engagement is quite important. So, where do you see NGOs like yours probably can contribute towards engagement in community and bring more awareness?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to say is we work very closely with startups. So in a sense, we are not trying to replace startups in any way or in any shape or form. And I agree that money is also not the constraint. I think I don't want to say only community engagement. I would say community engagement and government engagement, both are difficult. Because one of the things that I see, and we've experienced this in our work with all of these startups, we work with at least 3 or 4 startups in this space very closely. And they struggle in 3 or 4 different places. So firstly, for example, we have to understand that unfortunately water is a public good. And one of the problems, and a lot of the people who are in the startup space come from a very completely private good mindset. And so they struggle when they hit some of these barriers where you've got to work with government. For example, if you were setting up an STP to release water into a lake, you've got to deal with Pollution Control Board. And you've got to figure out, what kind of parameters do you have to do you have to manage and so on. One of the biggest roles that we have played and I think if you speak to any of the startups you work with, they would argue that we provide as a service, is to be able to kind of smoothen this a little bit for them. So for example, we work closely with Bangalore Apartments Federation, like I said, and a lot of the startups need to sell to Bangalore Apartments Federation. So I'll give you 2 examples. One is a startup which does work called Tankowala, which does work in kind of being able to transport wastewater from treated wastewater from points of generation to points of use. And a lot of construction for example, the government passed a law saying that construction sites are required to use treated wastewater. And apartments, on the other hand, are supposed to treat all their wastewater and not put it into the stormwater drain. Now, the problem is there was nobody to connect these two. They had a search problem because they didn't necessarily know how to find each other. So once we started playing this role of what we call an ecosystem building role of bringing everybody together, saying here are the regulations, here's kind of what are the uses. In some cases, there were absent regulations. So what is then required is to work with the Pollution Control Board. And the Pollution Control Board, for these market transactions to happen, needs to exempt them from liabilities. They have to say that, look, we're not going to put you in jail if you're going to actually use this treated wastewater in a BBMP park, for example, or on a construction site. So there's a lot of roles that people like ours, which is, I would say, ecosystem building and nonprofits, play in kind of making sure that all the dots get connected. Startups kind of don't go to jail, essentially. The users who need the wastewater can find them. If Pollution Control Board needs to at least temporarily sanction it, they can do that. So those, I think the primary role we play is in connecting those dots.
So then, when you do this thing, what are the major challenges that you face? I mean, typically.
I think the challenges, of course, is that, trying to find politically correct terminology for some of this, but not everybody's incentive is aligned in the same direction. Right. So just because we say there is a government agency or so on, I mean, there are good and bad eggs everywhere. And so one of the challenges we face is you hit into those types of rent-seeking kinds of issues where incentives are not aligned between some of the parties. And so that isn't going to be solved overnight, but it means that we've got to kind of gradually find allies in the system, work together. And unfortunately for startups, it doesn't happen at a time scale when they need to prove to the investors they were able to do it. So that's, I think, a challenge.
Right. So looking into these challenges, Mr. Muralidharan, what do you think could be a better business model who, look into these startups?
The first thing is define your customer. I think Veena mentioned it nicely. So to a startup, who is the customer? The apartment, the user in that apartment who lives there on rent, the builder of the apartment, the guy who's transporting that wastewater cleaned into some other place? Or is it somebody like Veena who will be supporting startups? So the cornerstone of a startup business model is, who is your customer? It's not as easy as me going to an Udupi restaurant and ordering rava idli. Here, the definition of customer is important. Second major point, what is the pain of the customer you're solving? I go to a doctor, I have a headache, he gives me paracetamol, the headache goes. What is the pain of the customer you're solving with your solution? Third, what is the gain you're giving me? If I go to the doctor and he gives me paracetamol, I'm not going to the doctor again, I'll buy it from a chemist. But he says, no, your headache is because of, you need some vitamins, and therefore you have this in your diet. He's giving me a gain. The startup has to give this gain. So, and that's where innovation comes in. The startups can bring innovation not by pain solving, but by showing my technology gives you that gain which was hitherto not available. This is part A. I think the part B is equally, if not more important. Convert this great idea into some money, finance. Many of the startups are brilliant engineers. Very few of them even think they need a marketing guy, let alone a finance guy there. Convert that into a business plan. Your business plan can show a loss, that really doesn't matter. But it shows, since you said Bangalore, in Bellandur, this apartment. From there, entire North Bangalore. From there up to Whitefield and Bidadi. I have expanded the market. Based on that, I have a revenue. I have a cost. I have whatever, profit or loss. Funders will come in. Funders want to see those numbers. And this whole gamut, starting on one end, define your customer, solve his pain, give him a gain because of technology, define your market, go step by step, show your numbers, top line, bottom line, get the funding, repeat the cycle. The success is guaranteed. Why? Nobody does it. What a virgin field. I mean, you go to, say, Bellandur, every room is filled with AI guys who want to do something for something in somewhere. Who thinks of a treatment of something coming out of the house where he is in? Such an blue ocean is possible. But go step by step.
Yeah. So, but this is like one challenge which I have seen is most of the time people who are not from that field and they really want to solve this problem, they find it difficult because they think that if you're going to work in this domain, you probably have to interact a lot with government agencies and those kind of bottlenecks. So they generally get, discouraged because of this. So is it really important to collaborate with government agencies on all these issues, or it is something like a completely purely technology startup can do something in isolation?
You have two parts to that question.
Yeah.
Unconnected to the field. Nobody can be more unconnected than me. Yeah, I know nothing on this line. At best, I'm a user, right? At best. So you can be unconnected because you're a user. Second is government agencies. All of us deal with government agencies. Yeah, what a big thing. We don't file tax. We don't pay GST. We deal with government agencies. You don't go for the traffic signals. Which government agency you don't deal with? As if to say that all the public sectors are so smooth and don't have any bureaucracy that government agencies should fear you. Get the contact, shake hands, go ahead. So the government agency is a myth we build up ourselves because we deal with them anyway. Third is maybe more relevant. An unknown man, and startups really don't have contacts. How does he identify that there's a Veena around who can help and a PKG around who can support? That is possibly a bigger challenge, which is where forums like TechIn can act as great catalysts. Once you get into that ecosystem, then you keep developing. Make sense?
Yeah. Great answer. Thank you. Professor Sanjeev, could you please throw some light on what are the new innovations which are happening in this area, per se?
I mean, there are so many innovations in the past few years. It's probably difficult to name all of them. But the cornerstone of all these innovations should be three things. The first is sustainability in terms of the water. So I'll focus on water treatment, right? Sustainability in terms of water. So Bangalore, for example, a few years back would consume 1 billion liters of water a day. And with poor central treatment plants, most of it is wasted. So it is not only a water problem, it is deadlifting that water by about 1,000 feet. So it's also an energy problem. So if you can make any solution that makes the water sustainable in the sense you reuse most of the water is the first checkpoint. And the second is energy sustainability. You do not want to be overspending on energy to treat your water. So what is it that can optimize both of these? And the third is sustainability of business. So if you meet the two technology points, like Mr. Sridharan said, if nobody wants to buy it for whatever reason, it's too expensive or whatever be the reason, that's not going to diffuse. So how do you optimize these three? That is the general definition of a successful technology. And there have been many. If you want to name one, I will probably use this as a selfish point and call electrocoagulation is something that is looking very exciting. But it is it allows for treatment at the point of waste generation. So you can save on all the piping and plumbing and pumps needed to send it to a central plant. It does not use chemicals. It does not use membranes. So it seems very exciting, but it's got an energy overhead, and there are many other problems. So unless you solve those problems, it does not meet one of these checks.
Yeah, thank you. And Dr. Veena, like adoption of these methods and these systems is quite important. So what do you think are the key factors which actually lead to the success of the adoption of these systems?
I think, I wanted to refer back to what Mr. Muralidharan said, which is about pain points. Because ultimately, if you're giving a customer something that they want, they are going to buy it. And one of the problems we often have when people come from completely a tech startup, they have this fantastic idea, but it doesn't solve anybody's immediate pain point. So I would say one important thing I would say for all startups is you may have the best technology idea, but are you also solving and the most important, because it might be number 10 in somebody's list, but maybe they're not ready to get to that before they've solved number 1 to 9. So I would say, are you solving somebody's most important and urgent pain point? And then you can do size of market and how much money there is and so on. So I think that's one problem. The second problem, I don't have a solution for is this issue of diseconomies of scale. Because what we are seeing right now with one of the startups that we are working with in this space, they're actually developing some very nice bioenzymes that they claim can completely solve the smell and taste problems in decentralized wastewater treatment plants. Which is huge, because those are the two parameters, smell and color, are the things that matter most to people, especially if they're using it for flushing and gardening. They don't want their building to smell, but they don't mind if, like, BOD is slightly higher and nitrate is slightly higher and so on. That's not the end of the world. Now, the problem is right now their price point is about 5x what any apartment is built. Because you guys know that if you go to an apartment and you're collecting maintenance charges, how much people fight for every 1,000 rupees increase in maintenance charge. And right now they are at 5x, probably 3 to 5x, where the price that apartments will really drive adoption. And the problem is they are a little bit stuck in that low level equilibrium where they're not able to scale, but only if they scale would they be able to bring the price down. So I don't have a solution, and maybe you can talk about what to do with these people who have a great idea and at scale it would work, but for whatever reason they're stuck and they're not able to bridge the barrier. So I don't
Maybe
know
any
if
comments?
Muradharan has a solution for this low level equilibrium trap problem.
I thought that is a smart way to throw the ball on me. Scaling is a challenge. It's a challenge because you have not issues of material or market, but issues of manpower. Very few people are willing to join a startup where they're not very sure whether they'll get a nice salary at the end of the month, assuming you get a salary at all. So one of the hidden problems of scaling is startups. The solution for entire scaling is have tie-ups. Don't see one apartment. See, have a tie-up with Salarpuria, that all the 10 projects they're doing in and around Bangalore, we will do it for you. Maybe the first price they quote will not be aggressive. It's unlikely to be aggressive. Nobody's going to pay 5x. The balance has to be paid by some angel investor. But once you've done Salarpuria, name, I'm mentioning that because they have a name, you go to X, Y, Z, all with brands. And very soon, before you say Jack Robinson, you have covered about 100 such buildings. Then your money starts coming. I've given, I don't know if you knew that and asked me that question. I've given talks on how to get the first 5 customers for a startup. How do you get your first 5 customers? Because the learnings from your first 5 customers is possibly more than all the lab trials you've done for several months. Because the lab trials will tell you all ISO certificate, EFQM, Demings, they'll tell you all that. But the first 5 customers are likely to give you no politically correct statements. They're going to tell you what they think of your product. But if you get that 5, getting 50 and going to 500 is not a problem if the startups are open to tie-ups, collaborations, and then find a solution of manpower by gig manpower. By gig manpower, you don't need permanent employees in startups. You can give them commissions, you can give them ESOPs, you can treat them as partners, a bit out of the box. Does that satisfy you?
So I had just one more question to, in continuation to this. Other than these scalability issues, what would you like to suggest to the startups so that they can typically avoid the pitfalls in their startup journey as such?
First, just because it's sanitation, social relevant, doesn't mean you make money. Your project must be to make money. It should not be people do it pro bono. There are no free meals in this world. It doesn't exist. That word doesn't exist. Who will pay 5x? She said 1,000 rupees. In my apartment, for 100 rupee increase, people come and cry, shout, scream, yell, holler. Right? So think of it as a business. If all you have an idea, it's just a research project. Keep doing a PhD, beyond PhD, become a Nobel laureate, write articles, do anything you need. Want to enter the space, you're doing a business. That's pitfall number 1. Pitfall number 2 is startups don't identify customers. They think they have an idea and customers will come. It's like saying I have 3 types of idli and the guy says I want roti. He'll say I want naan. He'll keep saying I have a good idli. I want roti. I'll give you a very good idli. Doesn't help. Third, have at the top founders both in marketing and finance. This habit of having, I have a great advisory board, all of whom are PhDs, DSCs, all technocrats, doesn't work. No investor is inspired by it. They want, bring the standard down maybe. Maybe the postgraduate's enough. Maybe 1 PhD is enough. But have a founder, somebody who looks after entire marketing sales, somebody who looks after entire gamut of finance, legal. And then you have a backbone of the product. So that's pitfall 2, your initial. First pitfall is think business. Second is clearly think this. The whole space have a mix of people. And third is, you're not going to be a unicorn. Right? It's all very nice to read on share prices, unicorns. Right? As long as after 3, 4, 5 years, just like you get a promotion in a company after 2, 3, 4 years, if you get your increase here after 2, 3, 4 years, you're on track. Because what you will leave as a startup is a legacy after 10 years. She probably has left a better legacy. PKG certainly has left a legacy by saying Malabar, Angel Network. She is leaving a legacy by Tekken. You're likely to leave a legacy, and that's what should motivate startups. You're not just saying something, I'm going to get a unicorn in 2, 5 years, 3 years, 4 years. It will not happen. If it happens, you'll probably have some questions raised even in the parliament and short sellers giving you articles. Have realistic ambitions, but be satisfied with a bigger and a higher goal, especially in this space. You're going to leave a legacy where even a guy in the rural will say thank you to you without even knowing who you are.
Thank you. Okay, so I think one last question for Professor Sanjeev, what I have is, you mentioned about sustainability, right? So how would you like to suggest that people who are building solutions, their solution could be environmentally sustainable? So if you have some opinions, what could be different ways or...
Okay, one is the ad hoc way of doing it. The other is a very structured way. So as I told you, when you say sustainability, whatever solution you come up with, the simplest, so I will talk about sustainability in a more global sense, in the sense, it is also connected to building a business. So let me give that angle. So what is happening right now is carbon credits and carbon footprint has become a very important point of view for many of the industries. Okay, not so much for the apartments, but at least industries. Because they get tax benefits and so on. So if you can offer a solution which can save them, or which can earn them these carbon credits, or which can give them, or you give them a solution where your carbon footprint is very low, then you have a business angle to it, which also allows for a sustainable solution. And the biggest problem there is your energy consumption. That is the first. Okay, so let me compare 2 technologies. I'll give you an example. So let's take a conventional STP that treats water. So the energy consumption there is very minimal, I would say. Yes, there are pumps, aerators, and so on. But then you have the production of methane, you have the production of NO2 gas because of the organisms. So that sort of gets included in, and if you work out the overall energy budget, it is actually not a sustainable solution. The carbon footprint is significant considering the amount of wastewater treatment that happens. So if you can beat that number, if you have a technology that beats that number and solves the pain points of conventional STPs, then you might have a winner. All right, it might over or offset the high O&M costs, or it might offset the high capex costs, because this is something an industry might be interested in. But to convince, so my experience has been it's very hard to convince apartment residents to increase their maintenance bill by any amount. So, but there is an angle to it. Okay. So that's
Can I add to that? I want to pitch, but I'll also talk about, I really like what you said. There's a very nice startup called Carbon Masters in Bangalore that's doing that, where they started off with actually solid waste, but they're also combining solid waste treatment and wastewater treatment, both decentralized. But what I really like about their solution is that they are doing it in a modular way, in a container, shipping container, which takes up one parking spot. So it's a very nice pitch to an apartment complex to say, all you have to give me is one parking spot, and I'll take care of these two major regulatory issues. And they do it completely then, and it's a ESCO model, so there's no capex, nothing on the part of that, on the part of the apartment complex. So I think thinking about things in unconventional ways, about combining solid waste, wastewater, about looking at an ESCO model, all of these work really well. The second thing is a personal pitch. We are also looking at water credits. That's we as in us, my team, is looking at water credits in a very serious way, because a lot of companies have net water positivity commitments also globally, particularly anything which is a multinational, usually at the global level have made a commitment to be net water positive. So even though water credits is not as standardized as carbon credits, we are hoping to make it so, in which case hopefully some of that eases your financing issues.
Can you just continue that? That startup is a classic case of who they're defined as a customer, which is apartment. I do also know of startups who have said, the same water, I'll give it back in the same apartment to water for the grass, because otherwise there's just mud lying there. And even then it's not, say, all the pathogens not there, this not there. It is still good enough to bring a lawn, and the apartments will love it. Then all the cost factor impact comes down. The message of both these startups, and I think there are quite a few working on it, is define your customer, see what gain you're giving them. Then all the pressure of the price, apartment owner, this and that will reduce dramatically.
Okay. Thank you. So I would now like to open the floor for questions from the audience side. So if you have any questions, you may please just.
No, otherwise it's also on YouTube Live, so you won't get it.
Hello ma'am, this is Vardhaman Lunat from Indian Institute of Science, working in biological wastewater treatment from Center of Sustainable Technology. I'm here with my Professor Honorable Srinivasan Ramaswamy sir. I have a simple question for you ma'am. Like you work in policy. Before coming here, I was doing my homework. So you work in policy. I need to ask you, either water should be treated as an asset or commodity. First, because many of them take water as a granted. So I think something should be started from there itself.
I mean, I think that, you're right, that until, and it's really, you're not talking about water, but wastewater, right? Whether wastewater should be treated as an asset. I think for sure, one of the reasons we are working on this idea of wastewater markets is right now, wastewater is purely a cost center. It's something, if you look at BWSSB, they charge you money on your monthly bill for giving you water. They don't get a rupee extra for treating wastewater. And therefore, the only reason they would invest in any wastewater treatment is when National Green Tribunal comes with a danda. There's only a stick, there are no carrots. So I agree with you that the fundamental game changer on the policy side has to be how to switch this, to make water, once you start treating it as an asset, then you can move from actually only having sticks to having sticks and carrots. So I agree with you, it takes time to do it, and that's the only, so absolutely what we're working on.
Yeah, I think so. If no other further questions, then I would really like to thank our panel members for taking out time and giving so many very vital and important information pertaining to treatment plan, how a startup can try to solve this problem, what are the challenges, sustainability issues, and particularly, how the engagement with community and the government should happen. So I really want to thank, and I think it's a very critical issue, and I hope more and more startups can come up and try to, the leverage the facility which Tekken is providing to solve some issue to some level. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for your time. Thank you.
upon Mr. Amit Sengupta to give away the mementos to the panelists.
Just rotating. Please, please, come. So we want you to give away the mementos. All right.
Thank you, everyone. Now, let's jump right back in. For the next panel discussion, the theme which we are having is eco-restoration through treatment systems. And the panel consists of Mr. Amit Sengupta, ex-promoter, VA Tech Wabak Limited, Mr. Vishwanath S., Director, Biome Environmental Solutions, and Ms. Shobha Raghunathan, Founder, Build AD. I would like to introduce the panelists. Mr. Amit Sengupta is the ex-promoter and executive director of VA Tech Wabak Limited, who worked in various leadership roles of this multinational company, offering a wide range of solutions focused on conservation, optimization, recycling, and reuse of resources directed at addressing water challenges across the world. Previously, Mr. Amit was an associate vice president of Kirloskar AAF Limited and was also the general manager of Nikko Corporations. Mr. Amit is a 1977 batch BTech Civil Engineering graduate from IIT Kharagpur. Sir, I would like to welcome you to the stage. Mr. Vishwanath S. Mr. Vishwanath S., popularly known as Zen Rain Man, is the director, Biome Environmental Solutions. He is a civil engineer and urban regional planner by training, and has 34 years of experience in water and sanitation sector. He has designed and implemented many water, wastewater, rainwater harvesting, and ecological sanitation systems. He has also worked on policy teams for the writing of the state water policy, rainwater harvesting policy, and bylaws for Bengaluru city, wastewater reuse policy for the state of Karnataka, and as an advisor for the national wastewater policy. Welcome, sir. Ms. Shobha Raghunathan. Ms. Shobha Raghunathan is an architect by profession and founder of Build AD, which focuses on empowering people through capability enhancement in the construction sector. Previously, Shobha was the National Director for Project Management at Colliers International, prior to which she headed the Occupier Services vertical for the project management at Cushman and Wakefield as Cohort India. She has built and led large teams in delivering campus building, large multi-tenanted commercial buildings, multi-use real estate projects, residential complexes, hospitals, and educational institutions. I would like to welcome you also to the stage, ma'am. And I would like to inform that this panel discussion will be moderated by Dr. Praveen Govind, Project Manager Tech-In of IIT Palakkad. He has a doctorate in bioengineering and experience in managing incubation and innovation ecosystems. Sir, welcome.
Hello all. As we are continuing with our deliberations, our panel 2 is on eco-restoration through treatment systems. Sewage from our households and other establishments find its way to water bodies and other open areas through different ways that causes the contamination of our drinking water resources, that ultimately leading to the spread of diseases, waterborne and airborne diseases. And as per the recent Pollution Control Board data also states that almost 28% of our national sewage is only going to the treatment solutions through STPs or other modalities. So, and a major proportion is leaving behind and causing all the contamination to our resources. So in this panel discussion, we would like to hear from our esteemed panelists about their perspectives on this and problem statement. And I would like to request you to kindly open up your thoughts with a couple of minutes, and then we can follow our deliberations, please. So I'd like to start from Shobha, please.
Thank you for having me here. I think this works. I think it's a very pertinent topic that you've picked up here, and very rightly, when you're looking at startups in this domain, this needs to be definitely a focus area. My background is in project management. I've also had the chance and ability to mentor a few startups through IMB, and I've seen how the social sector works, so I'm happy to bring that element in this discussion today and talk about what needs to be better done in bringing the idea to implementation. I think we have great ideas around. It's in the implementation and bringing that end product to the customer where, I think there is a lack, and we'll talk about that.
Can you please share, Mr. Ahmed?
Hello. I'm basically a technology person in the field of water and wastewater, and since 1977, I worked in this particular sector only. So I have seen the evolution of technologies, changes of purposes for which water is to be treated. And finally today, my first and foremost belief is based on, in the previous session somebody asked that whether to treat water or wastewater as an asset or a cost center. I think time has come for us to build up water factories. Wastewater is a fantastic asset, and with technology it has become very affordable too. At the same time, I'll talk about the role of technologies for various levels of treatment, because water usage are different. The highest is, say, demineralized water, which doesn't contain any mineral, to drinking water, which has to be very safe, and to, say, an industry cooling tower water, which more or less job is to cool. So for different purposes, the treatment levels are different, technologies are different. And since it's a very wide subject, I'll be sticking to some of the few technologies. That's all.
Mr. Vishnunath, please.
Yeah. So I come from a civil engineering background, but also I increasingly tend to look at the challenge of what we call wastewater from a social lens and a social perspective. Now, it's an easy number to quote, the 23% or 28% of wastewater reaches sewage treatment plants, and a vast majority does not. And then there is this familiar narrative that it is harmful to health in the outside if it is not treated. I don't think that the health risk is that high. I think that there are processes and technologies which can mitigate those health risks. And we should take a social lens to what we intend to do with wastewater from an economic perspective also, because economic systems for treatment of wastewater are increasingly costly, and as standards ratchet themselves up to become more and more complex, for example, the recent standards as prescribed by the NGT has really shot up the cost of treatment of wastewater. It simply means that we're going to push a lot of illegality into the system, because it's not affordable for a vast set of people in municipalities, small towns, to be able to do this kind of treatment to this level. That said and done, we should work towards a fit-for-purpose treatment. We should determine what use we want to put the treated wastewater to do, and then work ourselves back to standards, and then technologies relevant to that fit-for-purpose use. I think we need to mature as we go along, and we will do that as we go along. So it's a very interesting time to engage with wastewater, because some solutions can come not from wastewater alone, but say, for example, from hydrogen capture. You can capture hydrogen from wastewater, which will increase the revenue component of the cost center or revenue center, but at the same time, as an externality, it will treat the wastewater. So these are potentials and exciting times, so it's a great time to be at a startup. However, the word of caution being, please keep a social lens for the market, for understanding the market where you want to pitch your technology.
Great. So to continue with, I would like to ask to Mr. Amit Sen Gupta. So as you said, cooling towers, they are using recycled water, some of the technologies you mentioned. So in that aspect, recycled water can be used in the cooling towers, because there is a chance of this aerosol contaminants. So it should be completely, the recycled water that is using in the cooling tower should be completely like a
well, that's the easiest, because when we treat wastewater for other purposes, even for disposal for surface water as per the code IS 2490 or something, there is a given parameter, and problem is that was inadequate because it still contains some traces of nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus, which will ensure biological growth, and it will get covered with hyacinth and all these things. But in case of cooling tower, in any case, we use chemical programs for biocides and for all these things. So even if it is not up to that standard, it can be used for cooling for recycle, and before final discharge after many recycles, it may be further treated. But that is only towards the amount of the makeup water, not the full cooling tower cycle water. So that's easy. But the challenges come in a different way. I'll give you one small example. We did a treatment plant for the composite wastewater for Panipat refinery. I think a refinery wastewater is one of the complex, much more complex than your sewage treatment plant. It contains phenol, cyanide, thiocyanate, and whatnot. So we treated up to IS 2490 with oil between 5 to 10 ppm, this and that. But understand that Panipat refinery is a landlocked, surrounded by agricultural land, and in Haryana, the agricultural lobby and the Tikait and Jats, that's very strong. So happily Panipat was discharging the water, but the farmer lobby said that, sorry, even traces of oil is and other things, whatever is permissible to discharge in a river is harmful to a crop. So stop the refinery. Just imagine a huge refinery in India has to be stopped. So they made some arrangement. Then after a lot of discussion, it was decided to recycle the entire water. Okay, fine. Then, as you just mentioned, we decided how much goes to cooling tower, so it requires certain level. How much goes for processed water, that's another level. How much goes to produce power, means demineralized water. Entire water was treated, and not a drop was discharged. More than that, in Panipat gets its water from a distance of about 125 kilometers. So that has its energy cost. They saved on that also. Like, I think, Mr. Vishwanath, earlier, somewhere I have read that you are talking about the high cost of bringing water to Bangalore. I think it was a fantastic article of yours. So these are some of the things which can be done. So wastewater to be taken as asset, yes, this is an asset. You do not have to get it from 125 kilometers away. It is available there. So starting from cooling tower to all technologies are available, but mindset is the main thing.
Taking up that, Ms. Shobha, can you please add what are the key considerations in project management that advice that you can give to the startups who are looking for such implementation of social impact projects?
So there is this two elements to this. One is the startup element, the other is the social impact element. So I've worked with startups who are in for social impact and in for social good, but aim to make a profit out of it. And those who are totally considering the venture as a not for profit. With both, what happens is the founders are generally ideas people, right? We have a lot of ideas. We come with, we want to do good. And we usually have a product and a technology, and we get carried away by it. I might be repeating some of what Sir said in the previous panel, but I think what is really missing, and it's a very important thing, is who is your customer and what do they want? You want to sell, that's clear, I think, but we need to set that aside first and understand what is this impact that we are trying to create, and for who is it, and do they really need that impact? Once you define that, who are the other stakeholders? So if you're in a domain where you're doing social good, very often the impact is not just to one segment of society. You're working with multiple stakeholders, and that's where the complexity really comes from a project management implementation perspective. So it's important not to disengage with all the other stakeholders in the environment, and understand what is in it for them. No venture will be successful if there isn't something for each of those stakeholders. It has to be win-win at every stage. So we talk about stakeholder management and project management. It's nothing but understanding the dynamics of each of these stakeholders in the environment. What do they contribute? What do they take away? And how can we engage actively throughout the process? So these two things are really, really critical from a startup point of view. From an implementation perspective, project management is really key. It's something that we miss out completely. Like I said before, I think we are so product technology oriented that we have this idea and then we want to keep going and improving on it without looking at next steps. And like Mr. Muralidharan rightly pointed out, somewhere we have to take revenue into consideration from day one. And I would say not just revenue, but cash flow. Look at cash flow and keep an eye on the cash flow at all times. You may be cash negative for a long time, which is fine. But as long as it is intentional, as long as you know that there is going to be this time period where I'm going to be cash negative, and this is when I start, money comes in. And how does it come in? Who does it come in from? So who's your user? Who's your customer? Who's your paying customer? There are all of these definitions which are very important. Part two is, I think our impact needs to be measurable. If you're not able to, define it properly and measure it, you won't see the success that you really are in for. Is the impact coming from just installation? Is it going to come from operations? I mean, just at a very, very basic level, right? So somewhere in the codes it will say you have to have a water treatment plant. So is the installation of the water treatment plant your end goal? Is that the impact you're looking at? Or is it use of it 10 years later? Or the continued use of it? And then once you define that, you'll define your problem statements. For example, you mentioned, what about buy-in from apartment complexes? What about trained personnel to run all of that, not at a centralized level, but at a distributed level? What about continuous training and grooming and ensuring that they are motivated to do that? So the problem then gets defined at various levels. That is very important. And while you're doing that, defining and measuring continuously, you have to understand that there will be changes along the way. If you're a social startup, then your time frame is different. You're not here for looking at turnover and revenue year on year, the first year, second year. You have to look at this being a long-term game. and impact will change, the impact will change, the measures that you take will change, the process will change because your stakeholders may change and what they need may change, the technology may change. So while all of those changes are happening in the external environment and you're adapting to it, you have to continuously measure the impact that you're providing. And that has to become the basis and the foundation for the project management that you would do. Establish, plan your processes, be open to change, and continuously drive and monitor that. And project management is key. I mean, understanding, I think, the traditional project management systems, not the agile systems. The traditional systems is very important for us to drive this in the social sector.
Yes. Apart from that, do you have any advices for the startups for team formation also, as Mr. Muralidharan was suggesting, formation of a team, especially for the impact measurement?
He had a very valid point. I think it is, before you even start forming a team, it's important to reach out to customers and do some sort of a customer validation. Understand what do they need, how would they see impact. One is your definition of impact, but what is their definition of impact? And once you do that, you need to also look at it in finance terms, you need to look at it in outreach. So you may have a great idea, you may have the greatest product, but how are you going to reach it to the market? What is your market? How far-flung is it? Is it even possible for you to geographically reach that in the time frame that you're assuming? So planning will be required for each of these elements, and your team, ultimately it will be the team which will help you. Your customers may help you too. So you will have to work with the customers.
To ask you with Vishwanath, can you please tell how the water availability, that the domain that you are focusing much on, and wastewater treatment modalities and the startups or projects, how it can form a nexus and sync well?
So it's a very tough question, but I really like the points that you focused on in terms of the development of the market and how you need to understand it from a demand perspective, and financial flows being very important. It's very crucial. And what happens is there's a legal mandate to treat wastewater from which a lot of installations come, right? Because it's legally mandated. There's no cash flow or economic gain, but because you're supposed to do it, so therefore you have to do it, right? For apartments, set of apartments, more than 20 or municipalities and towns and industries. Then there is the element of cost recovery or recovery of monies from the product itself, which could be nutrients, it could be energy, and it could be water itself, or it could be a combination of all three. So for all three, we need to understand what the market is and how it can be linked to the market and what it means in terms of cash flows. So that's very important. Now for water, the challenge is that when it is available, it is hugely subsidized. So therefore your water, treated wastewater, then has to compete with subsidized water. Unless it's not available, unless there's a market price for water. So therefore, wherever you want to locate your wastewater treatment plant then becomes determined by the opportunity cost for water. The scarcer the water available in a particular area, the more you're likely to succeed with your operations, right? So therefore, this kind of understanding of the market, and specifically with water and wastewater, the local context, the hyper-local context of the wastewater market is crucial before you start on any product development. The other thing is that we need a range of applications. It cannot be just one product solving one problem, right? In the Indian market, what you need is, let's say for farmers, they need a certain level of treated wastewater. Industries, as you were mentioning, they need a very high level of treated wastewater. If you want to even bring it to drinking water standards, which is most likely to happen in the coming 10, 15 years after we overcome the psychological yuck factor, we need different technologies. So to look at the spectrum of choices and to increase those choices and plug and play to fit the purpose of what you want to design for, that will become crucial as you go along. I think as we go forward, the use of water itself will be faced with a conundrum. The highest price which will be paid by industries for treated wastewater will have to compete against the livelihoods that will be saved by the same applications of treated wastewater. So for example, in Bangalore, when you're generating 1,000 million liters of, 1,200 million liters of wastewater, there are two choices, right? It need not be either or. But that treated wastewater can go to farmers to protect their livelihood, or it can go to thermal power plants or industries for their industrial production. Now, the price that can be paid by the farmers is zero, whereas with industries there it's high. So the moment wastewater becomes a resource, it then starts moving not by gravity, but where the money is, right? Now, that will have to be fixed by policy measures and standards and legislations. It can't be fixed by the entrepreneur. But the entrepreneur will have to be wary of the regulatory framework and the market that and the pressures that will be put on his or her business when all this happens, plays itself out. So keep an eye open on the big picture as you work on your product. Easy to say, difficult to implement. But the final word also is, you may not form a good, robust team, but you need good, robust mentors. People who had experience in the field from different disciplines, who are not part of your core team, but who are there to give you the right advice as to where to take things forward. That's absolutely crucial in this sector. And that expertise has to come from different sectors. It has to come from agriculture, groundwater, industry, finance, and so on and so forth. It will not only come from the technology sector. So get that assemblage right.
To ask with Mr. Amit, so throughout your lengthy career, you have dealt with a lot of technologies, especially for the industrial domain, big projects. So for the domestic and industrial effluent things, what are the best adaptable solutions in terms of technology?
Again, it depends on so many things. Domestic sewage, we have a lot of technologies, conventional, new, depending upon the requirement, whether you want to discharge into inland surface water, there is some level, and if you want to sell to someone is another level. And just now, taking cue from what he said, if wastewater is an asset, it will migrate towards where money is. But it's an opportunity for a startup. Rather, I'm just digressing and coming. Gujarat is a great businessman. I'm not talking about Adani or this and that. I'm talking about in general. Jamnagar has two refineries side by side, Reliance and SR. Now, central government grant has come to many municipalities in India, including Jamnagar municipality, to set up a sewage treatment plant, domestic wastewater treatment plant. Jamnagar municipality, they decided that, okay, government has given us grant to set up the plant. What about running cost of the plant? Then, one of the refineries came to Jamnagar municipality after calculating that it's a coastal refinery, so their entire water requirement is made through desalination, which is costing them 50 to 65 rupees a kiloliter. They said, you put up your plant based on government grant, we will take up operation and maintenance free. Jamnagar said that's a good opportunity. So what they did, plant was put by central government's money, that refinery came, they put their staff, started operating it, and taking the water 32 kilometers away to their refinery. The cost, landed cost there is 13 to 15 rupees against taking water from the sea, do desalination at 50 to 65 rupees. So that's a win-win. But everywhere you will not have a refinery to start with. Mr. Gopal, who is chairman of Hyderabad Municipal, he once told me that Musi River has very little flow, so what we are thinking that we will be taking water and giving it to the citizens here in Hyderabad, and the wastewater will go to the farmers. Because otherwise, both the farmers and the general people, they were putting their claim on the water from Musi. Musi does not have that much water. So that is another thing. Go to the highest domestic, because my company had its R&D center in Switzerland. Why so? Because Switzerland is a landlocked country. They have only lakes. So any water to be discharged from industry or domestic has to be discharged into those pristine lakes. So the treatment standard is the highest. But In our company, our subsidiary in India, we cannot use those technologies. Those technologies are not sellable here. So that's what I'm saying, that when you talk of technology for domestic or technology for industrial wastewater, it has to serve a particular purpose, particular beneficiaries, affordability, and all these things. Accordingly, that's what he said, that if the startups get a good mentor about how to do, where to search, the viable options will emerge. Definitely. So many types of technologies are there. On days and days you can discuss on that. But once the purpose is clear, whether it is farmer, whether it is people, whether it is industry, etc., whether it is gardening and horticulture, and a mix of that, you can always find it out.
Is there a particular technology that is indigenized by
most of it.
technology?
That is exactly. I was age was young and I was a bit rebellious. My company proudly used to say that headquarter in Europe, and we have 151 patented technologies and this and that. I was the only young guy who stood up and said, "Sir, the problem is none of these technologies are sellable in India." At the same time, our people were doing a very good job when the first IS-2 CPHEO manual was made. A lot of industry experts and a lot of our professors and all, they came. And the technologies which they had mentioned there, those days, it was more than adequate. But as we know that percentages, someone say only 20% water gets treated, someone will say only 30% water gets treated. Those are totally different things. I mean, but indigenous technologies are adequate if people run it. You imagine the pathetic, thousands of crores have gone to Ganga pollution control. You give money to put up plants in Bihar, but in biological system, if you get power only for 4 to 6 hours in a day, all your microorganisms will die, no aerator, no diffuser, nothing can work. So how will those plant functions? After trying, they get frustrated, they said, open the bypass, whatever comes, let it go to the Ganga. This is the reality. So we do have indigenous technologies, no problem. And it is open source technologies, anyone can do it. Those are not patented also. In CPHA manual gives clear guidelines, at least follow that. That itself will take us to a different level. After that, wastewater as an asset, recycle, selling, that's next.
Asking with Shobha, so what are the best practices that you can vouch for the personnel who are engaging in the, or architects or the construction personnels, to make them insist about the sewage treatment plants as their first priority? Or do you have an interest in upskilling these persons who are already doing the plumbing, sanitation works?
Yeah, there's a big shortage of skill. We are looking at upskilling in that segment. We are right now looking at companies who would be willing to hire such upskilled personnel and create the demand first. But one step before that, so since you sent a list of questions and topics that we're going to talk about, I thought it'll be nice to share this in some communities and WhatsApp groups. And so I generally told people that this is happening today and we are talking about this. Can you name one building which is net zero water? There are a few. But interestingly, the level of awareness that I found across groups, and most of my groups would be architects, fairly good experience. We are talking about engineers in the profession, project managers. So we're talking about professionals with a fair amount of experience. And I was surprised that the level of awareness is not where it should be. Till yesterday night, I was very clear that the awareness is very good because of the kind of projects that probably I'm exposed to, and if you look at large projects and corporate projects, which is the experience I come from, many of them are certified LEED certified or platinum certified buildings. So there is a certain push towards sustainability, or you're working with corporates which have an ESG mandate and are very, very clear about their sustainability goals. But I think if you draw a median somewhere in the entire population of professionals that we have across the country, in the building industry, awareness building will definitely be a task that needs an awareness of need, an awareness of codes and standards and best practices, an awareness of technology and materials that can be used. And I think in that order, the amount of work that needs to be done increases. The awareness of materials and technologies is probably the least at the moment. So, did I answer your question?
Yes, it is. And do you have any particular upskilling programs that you work with?
We're working with universities at the moment. Me in my personal capacity, I'm also talking with Anuradha and IACMO as well as IPA and like-minded organizations to see if we can come together to create programs which we can then take to different universities and work at two levels. One is at the engineer level, create an understanding of plumbing systems. Unfortunately, today the course curriculum doesn't include that in great detail. And secondly, can be upskill our labor. Upskill to a tune of where they can be proud practitioners of the skill, and not just somebody who's apprenticing and learning on the job, but somebody who comes with an awareness of codes and standards and bring that pride back into the profession.
So, asking to Vishwanath, so you have worked with certain technologies of chemical, biological background. So, how effective are these technologies, especially for treatment and also with the wastewater harvesting techniques? So, apart from the technologies that is currently implemented by the architects or innovation profiles that is currently going on, so how far these effective are?
So there's nothing wrong with technologies. I mean, there is a wide range of technologies, as Mr. Amit mentioned, which can deal with wastewater to the required standards. It's a question of how skillfully do we design the system. Are we clear on the load that is coming there? What is the characteristic of the load? What is the output we want? And second is the characteristic of the operator, right? So because wastewater treatment is both a science but also an art. These bacteria are cussed creatures which need a lot of taking care. It's like making dahi at some kind of a level, right? So there are biological systems which will deal with wastewater and reduce carbon to a large extent. They may not meet the exacting standards which are required by now the NGT order or something of that sort, but they will be fit for purpose, right? So it's there, those systems are there, and then there are the energy intensive the favorite right now is SBR or sequential batch reactor. It's the flavor of wastewater treatment plants. But they come and go. So there's a membrane barrier. They come and go, but that's the flavor. So all technologies, the scan is there. It's the ecosystem in which the technologies have to be placed, which will be a challenge. And for the startup, the challenge will also be this. A lot of these small apartments and gated communities actually want you to run the system too. And because of the skill consideration and also because of the legal implications of what you're doing. Because now an apartment association is responsible for the quality of the wastewater and the STP. If there's an accidental death, it's the association which is liable legally. So we're creating all kinds of legal liabilities, regulatory liabilities, and putting pressure on the system. The system is buckling. So therefore, for the builder, an input technology would be the cheapest one, because if the builder is not going to run the system, then he's looking at it as a pain point, an expenditure point, and wants to minimize it. For the apartment association, running it is crucial. So therefore, the choice of technology made and implemented will determine how good and how effectively they have a chance to run it. It's not that they can run it, but they have a chance to run it. So all these are linked to the technological choices that are made. And one thing which has been a big disruptor has been the standards themselves. You can't keep changing standards. there needs a wastewater treatment plant when designed and set up is designed for 25 years. You can't then jump on and say, no, I want this standard to be improved and that standard to be improved. It's not going to be that easy, which is what the system is facing. So if technologies can be resilient to be able to improve themselves in terms of standards, that will be good with less investment and then for future higher investments. But to work on life cycle systems, technological systems which are life cycle oriented, that would be the challenge for us.
Actually, you rightly pointed out in some of our outreach activity or the discussion also, especially in the apartments, some of the STPs are operated by the security personnel. Just to cut the cost of having a STP operator, so security person is giving additional charge of STP operating. So in that sense, how the treatment modality will work further. So to take additionally, so is there a kind of low implementation or something to have these apartments as a single person as a STP operator or a trained person to maintain it at least?
So I'm increasingly personally, and there is a debate and discussion, I'm seeing that decentralization is not the panacea that we all thought it would be. Loading the city with 3,600 ticking time bombs. Let's say, for example, when SARS-CoV-2 came, the first fear was wastewater a carrier for SARS-CoV-2? Was it aerosolizing and then was it transmitting SARS-CoV-2? Because we were not clear. And with SARS-CoV-1, it had happened in a set of flats in Hong Kong where through the toilet pipes there was cases of transmission. Now, suppose you imagine, luckily science has shown that it's not infectious. The RNA is present in the wastewater treatment plant, but it's not infectious. Suppose it was infectious. Now you've loaded the city with 3,600 wastewater units. What happens to the workers who run it, even the security guard who runs it? What happens if they disappear? What happens to the wastewater? And what happens to the entire flow in the city? So now pandemics are also a big decision maker for wastewater treatment systems. Wastewater plants are now becoming barometers or thermometers for identifying the health of communities. So AMR, antibiotic resistant bacteria, is becoming an increasingly studied aspect of it. So wastewater is no longer the conventional just pick it up and treat it. It's going to become more and more important for us from a societal health perspective too. So the technology choice that we made when we were looking for the SARS-CoV-2 RNA, we were looking at different technologies implemented in Bangalore and saying which one of these technologies deals with the RNA better. So is the output water better in a particular technology as compared to the other, and so can we make those choices? So this is a brave new frontier which is coming in wastewater. So the startups will have to be disruptors and will have to come from a space perhaps not from the past but from the future. And that is where you want to leave the startup space to be, not be constrained by the imagination of the old, but to come from a space of the new, however skeptical we may be of that disruption, but that's the way to look at it.
Can Shobha provide some of the leads on adaptation of these green building codes, especially for architects or professionals who can take up that and implement in their designing of this treatment innovation or something?
Yeah, I think the green building codes have been around for quite some time, and they do talk about, there is a section on what
is that updated?
It is updated. It is updated. There is also a net zero code, net zero water code which has come out. How many buildings are built to that is another question. Again, I think it is a bit bordering on awareness, and do we need certification really, what is the benefit, and so on. I think the big change will come from apartments and residences, not just from these large corporate houses. But if you're talking about codes, yes, codes are there. Awareness needs to be built of those codes. Are they adequate? See, they're guiding in nature, really speaking. The big picture is that you want to drive less and less use of water. You want to recycle and reuse most of it. And that's what they drive. But to that effect, I think the entire building community of engineers and architects will have to drive that in each of their designs, each of their projects, So it's a collective sort of a responsibility.
Can you also please share some of your experience or best practices when you dealt with some of these local bodies or implementing this sanitation solution?
Wastewater treatment.
Treatment solutions.
Solutions. I think the larger campuses do have that. They do aim towards 100% treatment. Interestingly, a lot of them are also looking at other systems, eco, SDP sort of systems. How successful they are, I don't want to comment on that. But I do want to draw attention to the fact that while installation happens and implementation happens, and then you get those credit points, and then you're lead rated, and so on, I think the real checkpoint is 5 years later or 10 years later. What does happen to that? I think the apartment I stay in is a prime example. We've been struggling for the last 2-3 years. We've changed technology once, and that is a cost to the community. And yet, we're not highly successful. So I think that's where we are as a city, as a nation.
So maybe Vishwanath is having a lot more to say regarding your work experience with the local bodies. Please.
So generally I have a lot to say, but then there has to be a point in which the audience has a lot to listen to. It's not the... So one of the very interesting experiments that's happening is in Bangalore city itself, where the city is treating wastewater and shipping it to fill close to, right now about 250 lakes are being filled with it, and eventually about 1,000 lakes will be filled in the neighboring districts of Kolar, Chikballapur, Anikal and other places, right? So the city is reimagining itself as a water and fertilizer factory. This transfer of treated wastewater from Bangalore is the second largest in the world, next only to that of Mexico City. So here's a prime example of a metropolis, which is thanks to you folks also who have put up the treatment plants in Casey Valley and other places. So this is the brave new frontier, and I think this is how metropolises will have to imagine themselves. So what Bangalore has done is it's now just a pass-through for water that comes from the Kaveri. So the water makes a pit stop in Bangalore and then goes away to the farmers of Kolar and Chikballapur. So cities are no longer great usurpers of water from hinterland and river. That's the kind of one imagination. Then at the second scale, basic oxidation plants in small towns of 50,000, 60,000 population, and then getting that oxidation plant designed well and functioning well means that there's great amount of water available with nutrients for farmers, and that's happening in many small towns. Unfortunately, it's not legal because they're not meeting standards, right? So therefore now those municipalities are putting up MBR plants and SBR plants, which is absolutely useless, right? But because there's this aspiration trap, there's a standards trap, and then there is this funding trap and imagination trap of what municipalities are, so that's happening. So I think what to sum it up, we need a wide spectrum based on the context. And in semi-arid India, water is the scarcest resource available where groundwater tables are collapsing. And agriculture is in big crisis. Therefore, we must look at cities and small towns as providers of nutrient-rich waters for agriculture. And that many towns in India can do a very good job of it. So there are examples more in the informal sector.
Yes. As we are inviting this technological innovation thinkers for this grand challenge as well. So, Mr. Amit, can you please provide what is the scope of this sanitation technologies in terms, not in the terms of money making, but as a social enterprise or something? So, what are the as an advice to the aspirational youth? So, what is the scope of these technological startups who are jumping into the sanitation domain? Can you please give some advice?
See, let us look at three, apex of, corners of a triangle. One is cost, one is area, and one is operational complexities. Now, a technology has to be selected taking all these three. Like in an apartment complex, I cannot prescribe an oxidation pond. Not possible, because they cannot give that much area. Similarly, the small villages you talked about, those who had oxidation plant, I cannot talk about MBR, it is just not affordable. And today the mentality is such that for sewage treatment, no one is ready to pay money. Water, yes. So I think some of you have started hearing the word HAM, H-A-M. No, not from pork. Government of India, they thought that like water treatment, they can have a build on operate type of sewage treatment plants and all these things. It bombed, it failed. So they have come to the realization that government has to pay the money because nobody will pay money for sewage treatment. And HAM means hybrid annuity model. So I'm a contractor and a financer. Say a treatment plant cost about 100 crore. I will put 100 crore. Government will pay me annuity over next 20 years with interest and all. So for the financer, it's a good business proposition. The treatment plant is also built. But I want to see what happens to running of those plants in future in rural UP and Bihar and all these things. So that technology, as he is telling, depending upon what do we need, water-starved, arid region, they just need water. So some oxidation discharge treatment is good enough. Even today, my most favorite plant was built in 1970s, mid-70s, in Shamali Township in Ranchi near MS Dhoni's quarter. His father used to work there. That's a facultative plant design, which even from textbook they have started removing it. Very little water, very little power, a bit more area, but the water which is coming out from the last lagoon, 3 lagoons are there, the last lagoon is as good as your so-called biological treatment plants and all in the city. So what I'm saying that what do we need and how much we want to do? And another point I would like very much what Vishnath says, that demand is going, the treatment standards are going up. It puts us in a jeopardy. If really we want to put up a plant meeting the treatment plant standard, the water cost becomes so high until and unless we go one more step and sell the water, the whole damn thing is not viable. Somebody somewhere is wasting money, either government or people and this. So this is the exact thing that which technology, how technology and these things.
Perfect. So before we conclude, can we take a couple of questions from the audience? Please.
Thank you. So Srinivasan from IIC Bangalore. So a question maybe to Ms. Shobha and also to the entire panel. So it's regarding, what is the awareness on source separation, like separating the wastewater into streams and looking at it and resource recovery and so on, even if, if you consider apartments, then even that would require separate pipings, even for recycling. So what is happening right now? Is there some awareness? Even for recycling, of course, there should be extra pipelines. Right? And when, of course, nutrients, urine particularly, can be separated and grey water can be separated, we are looking at an entirely different scenario. So is there, some understanding of these aspects, like in the codes or like in the architectural world, civil engineers? So, yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to consultants, they of course have that. But again, that knowledge gets isolated there. If you look at the apartments, I don't think that knowledge base exists. Because people who are running the apartments, the apartment owners associations, they are the people really who need to understand all of this. The costs associated with it, the benefits associated with it. But that requires, awareness, bringing it to the masses, really. As long as it remains with consultants and specialists, it's not going to be effective. That's my personal opinion.
And this is not happening, right? Like it's not spreading, or there aren't any examples in your knowledge or anybody?
I think the kind of awareness campaigns that we need, similar to what we did when there was a drive against polio, or when there was a drive for waste segregation. That is the kind of campaign that is required for this as well. today there are only fights in apartment owners associations because I think of lack of understanding.
So, very interesting question in the sense, because for a long time I was with the government of India with HUDCO, and we were promoting single stack plumbing. We were saying merge all the pipes together because it will reduce cost. And now we are in the era of where we go about now saying, hey, please segregate your pipes. So these waves come and go, and then the user is sort of what's going on, kind of, right? And one of the biggest examples of source separation for urine, for example, was tried in the city of Ordos in China. Set of apartments, complete urine separation, urine to be reused as fertilizer, dry toilets, the composting toilets. The moment people moved in, they said, I have not paid money for this 18th century architecture. Remove it, I want pour flush, right? The aspirations of people, especially with fecal waste and with sanitation, is completely different, right? Even treated wastewater, which is portable standards in a set of apartments here, people refuse to flush it in their toilets because it's smelling of chlorine. Not H2S, methane or any bad smell, but chlorine. They say, I don't want that smell in my toilets. And I'm paying money for this apartment or renting it or paying it, so don't get it. So here is the idealistic world of separate plumbing and others. However, what we have to do is to take advantage of some of the ways in which the apartments operate. So for tanker water, now they're doing a different pipeline. And for BWSSB water, there's a separate pipeline. In the head of many of the small builders, small and medium builders, they all think that tanker water is bad quality, so it will go for non-potable purpose, and that's already in place, right? So your treated wastewater can then piggyback on that kind of a system. And for gardening, of course, people are very used to wastewater, but forget, the plumbing industry is going to be a big, big challenge. One of the challenges, how do we meter every flat and make sure that there's a demand control on that water consumption, which then has an impact on the STP. The moment we get efficient with water consumption, the STP load decreases dramatically. And that's proving to be a huge challenge in the city, even at an apartment scale, but even at a city scale, because we don't have any control on groundwater, for example. So you're designing for 135 LPCD, but people will be consuming 300 LPCD. So the system is either over-designed or under-designed. And when over-designed or under-designed, the STPs don't work. They have a huge challenge. So I can list out the challenges, but the challenges are many. The ideas are there.
If I might add one more thing, I think you brought a very, very good point in terms of metering. If we can drive segregated metering, that is one very nice way of driving awareness. And since it's focusing on the end result, which is reduction in water usage, and that's something that everyone can understand very easily. It'll, I'm sure, will percolate backwards to intelligent design, segregation of pipelines, maintenance of STP, upskilling of people. I think it triggers it. Today, the biggest problem is there is no metering, and there is, forget about segregated metering. You definitely need to meter groundwater usage. You need to meter wastewater usage, all separately.
Yeah, tariffs. Okay. Thank you.
Like we all are discussing about all the treatment efficiencies and all. This is very pretty well for tier 1 cities. I come from tier 3 where the population is around 15 lakh. None of the fellow is ready to pay a single penny for treating their wastewater. And then that's the real challenge. Like even if you talk about oxidation ditch or aerated lagoon, people are like, why should I pay? Even if you talk about the segregation of plumbing fittings, they are like, wo kharcha bad raha hai, wo nahi kar sakte hum log. So even the thing is like, per capita income of a person plays an important role there in tier 3. So for them, it is easy to dispose that water onto a barren land where the sludge can be dried. So with this aspect, I feel tier 3 is something, or tier 2 is something that 60% of India rely on. And there should be the focus made more over into tier 1, because we have solutions for tier 1 but not for tier 3. So I would like to ask your suggestions for tier 3, what we can be done.
So, because I've worked a lot with tier 3, so I'm grabbing the mic, apologies for that. That is the solution. take the sludge, apply it on land, make sure that there's nobody going to that land, make sure that it's not contaminating the groundwater, make sure that the nutrient is recovered, make sure they grow non-edible crops. That's the solution. So we have to look at common practices of what is actually happening. Look at the propensity of the person to pay. To change his or her behavior is going to take you a lifetime, right? And then work with existing systems, see how you can de-risk it. Two risks, health, environment. How do we bring technologies to make sure that the health risk is minimized, not eliminated? We can't afford elimination at this particular point of time. And how is the environmental risk minimized? And there lies a lot of solution space which has not been addressed by the conventional systems. So for me, the biggest success for me is in the small town called Vijaypura, where untreated wastewater is being taken by a farmer, a set of farmers, and who are growing mulberry, and rearing silkworm and converting shit to silk, without any treatment plant, right? The farmer's field is the STP. Now, should the town not pay the farmer for treating its wastewater? That's the kind of economic systems that we need for the tier 3 towns. And the only other point that I disagree with is that if you have money, you're willing to pay for sanitation. No way. It's actually the rich who refuse to pay for it. At least the middle class and the low income will pay, but not the rich.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting point, and it goes back to what I started with, which is you have a technology, you want every customer to buy it because you feel the technology is great, and you're frustrated he is not willing to pay. But his problem statement is different. His solutions can be different. So what Vishwanath sir just said right now is a different solution to the same problem. Look at traditional methods and maybe you can come up with a different solution. Maybe the solution for a tier 3 city or a rural area is different. Actually, sanitation should be far easier in rural areas and tier 3 cities than in cities.
Not only the cities, even semi-village, semi-cities. I'm talking about Bangladesh, very poor. Now what they're doing, they are taking septage, that is the soak pits and all, they're taking septage sludge, they are putting it on, they call it plant-based beds and non-plant-based bed, putting it there, the substrate which is going down, that is just like, we do composting at home and we get the liquid. That's very rich in nutrient, they're using it. And the dried sludge, what they are getting on the top, that is fantastic manure for their fields.
4,000 pieces of tractor load in Bangalore.
Exactly. So somewhere people are doing it in their own way and successfully doing it. Problem is in big cities, we do not have sewer pipelines laid in many places. And we are telling the apartments that you do your own treatment plant. That is it.
So, myself, Sri Ganesh. So, question for Mr. Amit, sir. So, seawater has the highest asset for water treatment process, but there is a very less amount of water treatment floats. So, may I know what are the challenges faced during the desalination process?
What are the challenges faced in desalination?
During the desalination process.
See, the desalination is used in slightly broader terms. The highest of them is the seawater desalination.